Hello, I'm Jeff Harold from Lake County Art League, and I'm here talking to Karen Margulis,
That's right.
and she's going to be doing our paper demonstration for us, basically on using pastels. And I know we're all looking forward to that, but what I wanted to do in this little interview is just get to know Karen a little bit better and see some of her thoughts about art. She has a wonderful website, blog that we're going to talk about, and I'll show you in a little bit, that has some absolutely wonderful comments, questions on it. And if you Google her, you'll also find a lot of videos that are very nicely done. So, Karen, just I know we talked about this before, but you want to go ahead, just introduce yourself as far as what's your background, what are you currently working on, sort of give us the generals.
Sure. I guess the general is I really didn't get into art until I was grown. My children were in high school, and I wanted to paint. I'd painted some in high school, and so I took watercolor class, which didn't really work for me. But then I discovered pastel, and I haven't looked back since. And that was back in 2006. So I've been painting, and I consider myself a daily painter. I paint every day, and I'm fortunate that I can now teach. Online, and when we can travel again, I love to teach workshops. So I'm full time painting and teaching, I guess you could say.
Okay. It sounds like you're keeping busy, and I we did see a little bit of your studio, and in your videos, it shows your studio. You have a great studio, really. It looks like to me for working in. Is
It
that
it it
was that a room set up specifically for you? Is it a garage redecorated or something, or what?
Right, it's actually a daylight basement, so I have a two big windows and a door with a window. It's pretty big, as you can see. But I had a family daycare business while my kids were younger. So for 20 years, that was a playroom, like a preschool room, if you will. And that's when I started with pastel. I could paint while the kids were napping, and I would have my one little corner where I could leave everything set up. But as the kids grew up and went to school, and I gradually downsized, art took over, and now art is everywhere. And for a while, I was teaching in that studio. I could accommodate 12 artists easily in there. But
Wow.
now I take up all those easels are all my stuff. So it's like if you have space, you tend to spread out, So
I know that very well. I have
yeah,
I'm in our basement right now, and even upstairs, our walls have a lot of my art collection, but a lot of my pictures too. And
sure.
it's like you have so many of them. For you, they're just canvases, and uh, for me, they're all framed pictures.
Right,
And
right.
so I get the frame and everything on all of them. So it's sort of like your canvases, they're so certain size, and you need the room to store them.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah,
I think everyone has that same problem.
yeah.
Uh, that might be a good business for us to start, right? Is artist storage area or storage
Storage
units?
or organization for artists. But I wouldn't be the one to do it because I'm not. I can. It just gets out of control so easily.
Oh,
The
yes.
one nice thing though about pastel is most of my paintings are done on paper, so I can store them unframed, flat with like glassine paper in between them. So I can
Ah.
store quite a few paintings and not take up a lot of room.
Are you not
So.
worried about them, the pastel smudging?
No, they're actually a lot hardier than we give them credit. As long as you're not jostling them around. So I'll basically take a box, I'll lay a painting, then I'll cover it with glassine paper, and then I'll lay another painting on top of it. As long as you're not shaking the box, it's not going to
Yeah.
smudge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
The sanded papers that we use nowadays really grab the pastel, and it's not, they're not as fragile as they seem, although they
yeah.
do need to be framed under glass.
Now, I remember a long time ago, I was playing around a little bit with pastels. I remember uh, reading about, okay, once you put a coat down, uh, if you get a coat over it or you finish, you spray it with a fixative. And then you can paint over it again. You don't use pastels over it again, or you
Mm-hmm.
can, it's some way of just keeping them from dusting off. Is that something sort of passe now? Is that not something
Um,
normally done?
Well, there's so many ways we can work with pastel, and for the longest time, I didn't use any fixative at all, because really the pastels nowadays and the papers we use, you can easily layer many layers of pastel and not worry about them, smudging or mixing them. If you're having
Yeah,
a light enough touch, which I will show you in my upcoming demo. But I do use fixative, workable fixative, to build up texture, which is a totally different thing.
okay.
I could paint without fixative, but I use it as part of my technique. But I never use a final fixative, so when the painting is finished, I do not spray it.
Yeah,
I just give it a good tap on the back. Anything that's loose will be dislodged, and then it's fine.
good. All right, I'm sure I don't know. Like I say, I don't do pastels now, but I know we have some members that do a lot of them. So I'm sure if they know that, if they don't know that, they will be happy to hear it. Uh,
Sure.
okay, can you just sort of go through your process? I know you have one video out there about how do you start a pastel work, and you explain a little bit of a procedure of how you go about, with a blank sheet of paper there. Okay, here's my photo or my picture. How do you get started? What do you do?
Well, a big part of my process involves a little pre-planning. So, which is true for really any medium. You want to take time to make a plan, do a thumbnail. I like to do a very simple value study thumbnail, and which I use to start the painting. And then I will select my palette in advance. So, just like say with oils, you want a limited palette. Same with pastels. I mean, we have most pastel artists, if they've been at it for a while, will have hundreds and hundreds of pastels, but it's too many to paint with in one
Yeah,
single painting. So I pre-select a palette always before I start, and then I do some sort of underpainting, whether it's a wet underpainting, whether it's with another medium. But I start the painting usually very simply with a block in, and I'm looking at the value thumbnail to start that painting. And then, only then, will I take out the reference photo and, continue the painting.
what do you normally use for that underpainting? As far as, do you use watercolor, uh, pastel yet, or what?
Right. Well, I am all about experimenting, and I like to have a variety of options. So there are some artists that like they settle on a certain technique and they stick with it, but I'll I'll use anything. I have started you can start a pastel painting really with any other medium. Really the most simple way though is to start it with pastel. And you
Yeah,
can lay down a layer of pastel and either rub it in or wet it with any kind of liquid. Doesn't have to be alcohol, it could be water, it could be odorless mineral spirits, that kind of thing. So I don't have any preferred way. I I love, I'll choose an underpainting technique depending on the subject, really.
now
So,
I know I think if I remember correctly, your demonstration you're using just like a white paper. I know there are
mhm.
also colored pastel papers. What do you use? You just use those to set like an overall tone for the whole painting and then proceed from there, or how would you use a colored pastel paper?
Sure. Um, yeah, that's one of the nice things is we can get so many colors in our papers, but it can also get confusing as to, well, how do I know what color to choose? If I'm going to choose a color paper, it's going to be to help, as you say, set a certain tone or mood, so like a warm color if I want a sunny day, for example. Most of the time, however, I don't choose colored paper. I choose white or a very light tone so that I can add my own color to the first
Yeah,
layer, to the underpainting.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, A toned or colored paper is kind of gives you a head start. Um, but you always want to choose a color that's going to help support your painting concept. No,
Yeah,
you don't want to just pick a piece of paper that's on top of the pile because it will have an effect on the finished painting.
yeah. Uh, talk about finished paintings. Do you have any sort of method that you use to decide, okay, I'm done, as opposed to just keep fiddling with it, or is it just a matter of
Yes,
at some point
actually.
you say
Right.
quit?
Right. Well, one of the biggest problems that we often have is we overwork a painting. We don't stop soon enough, and
Yeah.
before you know it, everything is like all the freshness is gone. So I actually do have a kind of a method, I guess you could say. As I said earlier, I start the painting with a plan. So I take some time to make a plan. Then I paint with what I like to say passion because I have answered all the basic questions. Then I can just let go. But when I get to a certain point where I find myself just painting and I'm not paying attention, then I stop. And then what I do is I take out a piece of paper, or I use a dry erase board, and I write down a list of the things I need to do to finish the painting. And I really want to talk more about that in my demo because it's really an important part of my process. And
Okay.
it's easier to show it than to talk about it. But basically, I just slow down, and I do have some questions that I ask myself, which I want to save if you don't mind for the demo.
Okay,
And
that's
that's
fine.
how I know.
Gives
Yeah,
us something to look forward to.
that's
Good
right.
idea. Okay, let's see if I can ask a couple questions about your website and some of the comments or titles you have out there, and see if
Sure.
these are ones that you won't necessarily save for the demo, but
Okay.
which ones you may. And when I was out there looking at your blog, there were a couple that really intrigued me, and I think you and I talked about this before. Uh, do you want to explain what you mean by uh, using how does a butterfly, what does a butterfly have to do with your composition?
Sure. Well, I came up with this idea of the butterfly, or even a bumblebee. You could think of when I was teaching about composition over on my Patreon group. We spent a whole month on what I called composition boot camp. And for me, composition is about creating a visual journey for the viewer. In other words, attracting the attention of the viewer and showing them around the painting. In other words, orchestrating the eye movement. So you are basically going to show the viewer what you want them to look at, and you do that through various ways: contrast, make linear marks, that kind of thing. But the butterfly was just kind of a reminder that you need a place in the painting for the butterfly to be attracted to, and not just one thing, but you want the butterfly to fly around your entire painting and not really leave too soon, but linger in various places and then give them a nice way to exit. And so it's kind of just a visual aid to remind myself that I want to create a visual journey for my viewer.
Okay, it almost sounds like one of the things I like about pictures, regardless of how they're constructed, whether they're using oil painting or photography or whatever, is I like ones that you can explore and you can look and you can see, oh, over here in the corner, look at this is neat. Even though you got a main subject there that's in a proper compositional location, you have something to explore in it. And it sounds almost like that's sort of what you're talking about, is it?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is you want the viewer to explore the whole painting and not just your focal area or your focal point. I once heard someone say you want every square inch of your picture to have something interesting. Not It doesn't have to be anything major. It might be just a way that you make a mark. But that's part of it. But some things are going to be more interesting than others, and those are those little areas of
Yeah.
rest for that butterfly, just so that they have something interesting to be drawn through the painting.
Yeah, and you're right. I
So,
can see how that is a compositional concept because when I teach composition, one of the things I point out to people is that uh, the purpose of composition is to trap your viewer in your picture because
Right.
you don't want him just glancing at and there's nothing interesting there and he just goes on his way. Advertising is like that. Uh, Advertising pictures are designed to, grab someone's attention, even if it's a split second or so. That's the purpose of it. But when I look at an artwork, I want to be trapped in there for, you know, 5, 10 minutes right now, and then come back later and be trapped again for 5, 10 minutes, just
Right.
looking at the different parts of the picture. And I think I see that. I see that in a lot of your work there. Uh, so that's interesting. Okay. Uh, what was the other one? And another question here. Uh, the other thing you and I talked about before a little bit, and I think to go through it again, it would be helpful. And that is, you say you should paint for 10 minutes. What you can paint in 10 minutes and why you should try. All
Oh,
right,
okay.
and explain what your thinking is on that, what your thought process is on that.
Well, I think I've always been really a strong believer in putting time at the easel. It's important that we learn concepts, that we study the important concepts of art, value, composition, color theory, edges, all of those things. But unless we spend time painting, then we don't really get those concepts, don't become intuitive. And
Yeah,
I think for a lot of us, we don't have a lot of time to spend hours, but I find that, and I didn't when I was learning how to paint and was very frustrated with my efforts. I didn't have a lot of time, but I did have 10 minutes. I did have 15 minutes after I finished my lunch and before the kids woke up. So I would do a small quick study. They were studies. They were not
yeah,
necessarily finished paintings, but just spending time getting going really helped. It was a cumulative effect. If you do that every day or several times a week, it's going to benefit. We don't always have to approach the easel with the idea that I'm going to finish a masterpiece. So
yeah.
daily studies, I think, were very helpful, and it actually helped me become a faster, more intuitive painter that
Hmm,
way. So
yeah. Well, it gets you used to techniques and how to develop a sketch or a base for something
mm-hmm.
quickly. I think that's a good way to do it, a good way to learn and practice. So,
Yeah,
okay, can we look at your blog here?
sure.
And because I find this very interesting. All right, and there we have. Uh, this is your blog. Anyone that does this, actually, if you just Google uh, Karen Margulis names, it will give you a whole slew of things, and I'll show you some of those a little bit later. But this one was sort of interesting. I love this, and your whole question is how to make your palm trees glow. Uh, and would you be willing to just sort of condense as reading what you're doing, but can you sort of condense what you're doing there to make them glow?
Yeah, sure. Yes. So this blog post I just did the other day, this is actually a demo that you can find on my Patreon group. So on the Patreon group, I do a demo two demos every week, alongside other lessons and things like that. But this particular lesson, I wanted to showcase. Well, the I was really attracted to the late afternoon light on these palm tree trunks. So I wanted to showcase how if we use warmer, more intense colors rather than a lighter value, we will get the glow of the sunshine. Kind of like the idea of kiss it with sunshine, kiss it with a warmer color. A lot of times when we think about light on, say, a flower or a tree trunk, we think, oh, it's light, so I should use some lighter color, right? Maybe a lighter value of the of the trunk. But when you do that, you're actually creating something that's kind of washed out. So instead, go towards the sun. Think of the color wheel. Go up towards yellow, and you're going to increase the warmth and intensity of the color using orange and red orange, and you'll then get the glow of the feeling of that late afternoon sun. And I did the same thing to the palm foliage. I used warmer greens, even some orange, to create the glow on the palm
Well,
trees.
yeah, you also showed where this was your underpainting for that, right?
Right. I started with a warm underpainting, so that also helped increase that warmth, that overall warm feeling to the
Oh,
to the trunks.
okay. And was this pastel or watercolor or what?
That was pastel that I liquefied with rubbing alcohol and a
Oh,
brush.
oh, that's interesting.
So what that does is a couple things. It sort of sets the pastel into the paper. This is white sanded paper, um, and so it kind of sets it into the paper so you can get layers without those dark colors mixing. But it also, when you liquefy pastel, it kind of drips and runs, and you get some interesting things happening that help you give you something interesting to respond to instead of, I like to say that I want to interpret my reference photo rather than copy it. And so if I can start off with this kind of loose, drippy, kind of interesting underpainting, it helps me be a little bit more painterly when I start adding pastel.
Now, when you liquefy the pastels you're talking about, uh, can you give a comparison as far as how it works? You're saying you use a brush on it then. Is this comparable to watercolors? Is it a little bit more like oil? Is it thicker or thinner or
Uh, right, it's going
anything?
to be thinner. Yeah. So here's you could use any medium. So liquefying pastel, basically what you're doing is when you wet pastel, you turn it back into its liquid form, which pastel
Yeah.
is basically pure pigment with water and a little binder. So basically you turn it back into paint. You turn it into gouache, really, essentially. But it has to be thin enough so that it doesn't clog up the tooth of the paper, because if it's
Yeah.
too thick, then you can't get as many layers of pastel. So you don't want to apply the first layer of pastel too thickly, because then it'll gum up the paper. Same thing as if you were to use, you can use oil paint, you can use acrylic paint for an underpainting, but it has to be thin so that it's like thin as watercolor. Actually, when I use watercolor, I use pan watercolor so that I don't apply it too thick, because you could apply watercolor thick if you want to, but then you don't have the ability to add as many layers of pastel.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you also have you're showing it the palette that you used
Right.
for for
This
this.
is something that I've been
So
doing now for the Patreon group. They like to see the actual color swatches. Well, I selected these out of a larger set of pastels.
yeah.
So there was 60 pastels in the set, and the pastels I like to use the most are Terry Ludwig pastels. They're made in Colorado. They're wonderful. Most pastel artists, it's ranks among the top favorite. So I selected this set. It's called the Floral Landscape set, but it's even 60s too many for one painting. So this is really the, the limited palette that I ended up using for the
Yeah.
palm tree painting.
Yeah. That just goes from the theory the uh, too many choices can lead to indecision and just
Yeah,
sort of like you sit
right.
back and you just sort of freeze of okay, I got all these choices, you know, how do I pick
Yeah,
which ones?
it's hard to know where to start. So
Yeah,
that's why I like to pick them out in advance before I even pick up a pastel to paint. I have them on my tray and I say, okay, I'm only going to use a limited number. I can add to it, of course, uh, but it just gives me more control. And you end up with more color harmony that way as well.
do you have a way or process or thought process of how you decide what the palette is and which pastels you're going to pick or which colors you're going to pick for that to start off with?
Yeah, and I will do that also in the demo, but basically all I do is I look at my reference photo and I just choose a set of, a few pastels for each element. So
Yeah,
basically I'll say, okay, what do I need for the dark areas? What do I need for the sky? What do I need for the tree trunks? And I just simply go through the elements that are in that particular reference and I select a variety of pastels that I think would work. And I think it's become much easier the more I have done it. Obviously, if you're new to pastel, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But the good news is if you have the values right, you can really get away with any color. You don't have to have the exact shade of green that's in your reference photo. As long as you
yeah,
have the right value of that color, it's going to work. So that's really one of the things that I stress in my teachings, that color gets the glory, but value's doing the work. So let's get a handle on the value first, and then we can play with color.
yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then you have this one, and this is another interesting one. Using tunnel composition and listening to your painting. Okay, what do you mean by listening to your painting? I listen to my photographs sometimes. They don't tell me too
Right.
much. They're
Well,
very
I
quiet.
don't. Yeah, I know. Sometimes they're quiet and sometimes they're very loud, and sometimes we ignore them because we have an idea of what we want to happen. And this is another, excuse me, example of a video that I did for the Patreon group. And we were talking about composition and I was trying to do a tunnel composition. But I think it, something happened in the painting and it wasn't working the way I thought, but I actually liked what was happening better. And the idea is I listened to it and was guided by my, intuition, I guess, rather than trying to be a stickler to the original plan and the reference photo.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I like this one. It shows actually a compositional concept that I would use on this, that I would use in my classes, is a frame within a frame. Because basically you've got your main subject is the light back there, the light yellow and orange leaves, and the brightness of the sunlight hitting the water, and it draws your attention back that way. And the tree overarching and the what are they, pine trees, where they are on the left hand side of it and everything, sort of help guide you into that center of it, and that's why I think makes it a very interesting picture to me. I like it, uh, but yeah, that's a I don't know. All I can say is I think you did a good job on this one. I like the composition of it, and the colors really help keep you into the center of the picture, keep you there, hold your
yeah,
attention.
I think that if I recall from the demo that I gave, I didn't have as much of intense light in the distance, right? So it just wasn't working. In other words, there was nothing back there,
Yeah.
to be framed. So I punched that up, and I think, in the end I was happier. And I believe that the water actually was supposed to be dirt, and I think something in my brain said, no, you know what? I think you need to make that water.
Oh,
And so that's
you
what I
mean,
mean by listening to your painting.
yeah.
You don't have to be married to your reference photo unless, you're painting someone's,
Yeah.
uh,
So that
backyard. And
so in your
yeah,
in your in your photo that may have been a dirt path, right?
I think,
And you
yeah, it
ju-
was a
and
dirt
you
path,
just yeah,
right?
and you just turn yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
that's really something.
that's
That's
what I
something.
like about, right.
Yeah, that's something about painting and
Yeah,
pastels, oil, whatever, as opposed to photography. You
right.
basically can create the image and you can modify it however you want. If you're doing pretty
Sure.
much straight photography, you don't have that luxury all the time. Now, I can get
Right.
in
Right.
digitally and manipulate stuff and use digital,
Sure.
painting to do stuff like that. But that's something that a lot of people wouldn't think about. is that, okay, here's the picture that I have of this stream or of this path going down here, and hey, I'm not going to make it a path, I'm going to make it a stream.
Right.
And a lot of times people won't think of that and say, oh, I can change this however I want.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes is from Degas, and he said, "Even in front of nature, one must compose." And I think, he gives us permission to change things if we're going to make a better picture. Just because it's that way doesn't mean it has to be that way.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I like having that freedom to, you know, follow my
yeah.
intuition and to be more playful.
Well, since you mentioned Degas, let's talk about that for a minute. What are your major influences in art as far as art movements, artists, either contemporary or historical?
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, I love Degas and the fact that he enjoyed using pastel. I think one of the things that I was fascinated about was when I found out that he did monoprints or monotype and put pastel on top of that, and that was something that I explored for a while. And I did a session on that in the Patreon group. It is actually something I'd like to explore some more. So I think his work has had an influence, uh, not necessarily the way I work, but just to enjoy seeing how he worked with pastel and some of the things that he tried
Uh,
was fascinating. Um,
I think it's interesting because I've seen some of the work from Mary Cassette, who studied with Degas for a while.
mhm.
And it's sort of interesting that if you look at some of the work, you can see a little bit of you can see some of the similarities and some of the
Sure.
differences in them,
Right.
uh, which is something that's I wouldn't mind studying a little bit more of, to see what those
Oh yeah,
differences were.
it's fascinating.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's interesting to see an artist, and you can see this, throughout history. Uh, when someone studies with a great artist like Michelangelo, then it goes off and makes his own name, and it's interesting to see how they differ and how much alike they are.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, so what else we got here? There was something else I was going to look at here, and again, this is your underpainting for that
Right.
scene.
And in this, it's also another wet underpainting, but in this instance, I used a warm and cool underpainting because I wanted to really capture the warm light and the shadows. So I get a head start by starting with big warm shapes and big cool shapes.
Yes, and we can see the picture that you used as your inspiration for the pastel painting. So, and you can see where it did just have the straight dirt path down there.
Right.
Okay. And I particularly like this one.
Yeah,
I
this is
don't know why, but it's just one that I really liked. I liked the composition. I liked the hanging of is that moss from the
yes,
trees?
the Spanish
What's the
moss.
Spanish moss?
Right.
Yeah, and the path leading back there. This is I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, this is a recent one. We went camping in Florida a few weeks ago, and these were in the campground, and so I really intend to do a whole series of these trees because they were just fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been down there, and some of the big cypress trees and everything they have down there
Oh yeah.
are really fascinating. Actually there's a cypress swamp in uh, southern Illinois that we used to take classes down canoeing, and we canoe through them,
Okay.
and you had cypress trees down there that were 100 years old. One had something like 120 knobs or feet, I guess
Wow.
they're called, what
Yeah.
have you. You
Yeah.
know, it's and then again, you have your underpainting. And now
Sure.
this
And
set of pastels looks like it was just for the underpainting. Is that right?
Right. So these are okay. So this is an example of doing a dry underpainting and using a dark gray paper. So like you can see that I like to experiment and try different techniques. I came across this little set of pastels. They're actually Rembrandt pastels, which are on the harder side. Most of the pastels I use are much softer, but these are sample sets, and they came in perfect value range. And I thought, that's going to be a perfect way to do a value-based underpainting very simply because the values are already there. You don't have to find them in your pastel collection, and they were
Yeah.
only like $5, so I was really
Wow.
excited about them. So
Yeah,
that
no
was cheap.
kidding. For
And
five
they
bucks?
they did a good job for a value based underpainting, which is one of the techniques that I teach, especially to beginners.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right. Uh, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change views here, and if you Google Karen, you will find a whole slew of stuff here. You are a very busy lady, let me tell you. And she has all these videos out. And Karen, you were explaining to me that part of the uh, push for the videos comes from your husband. And if I remember correctly, you said he actually does the videos for you as far
yeah,
as the
yes,
technical, camera work.
right, right. He does he does the camera work. And we have I was talking to you about this, like when we first started. They were terrible, really. Uh, and so we've learned along the way to do a better job with the videos. So I have a YouTube channel. Um, I have, I'm not sure how many are on there. I really do try to release at least two videos per month on YouTube channel, which that's available to everybody. But then again, I have the Patreon page, which you pledge $4 a month, and there's a lot more, over
Yeah,
300 videos. So, but there are quite a few available for free on YouTube.
yeah, and
Uh,
these are anyone wants to go out and look at these. They're very nicely done. I actually started a couple of them. I haven't finished them unfortunately, but I was looking at this one the other day. A no fail way to start a pastel painting. Uh,
right,
and that's why I was asking about that at the beginning there. But
sure.
yeah, there are a whole bunch of these, and anyone interested in doing pastels, uh, I think these appear to me to be very excellent videos. So, and Karen has, we'll see her in her demonstration, but from what I see in the videos, she does a very good job of explaining her techniques and showing you how to do things. So that's uh, that's my plug for you there. I think it's
Well, thank
worthwhile.
you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah,
I think it's
it's really,
worthwhile.
well, it's a pleasure to have an opportunity to share what I have learned, over the years. And my goal is always to simplify. I want to put it in simple enough, explanations that anyone could really try it. It doesn't have to be hard. So I try my best to simplify everything
Yeah,
in the videos and my demos.
I think you do a good job of it. And
Thank you.
if you look at other things, you also have the videos. You have your blog, you have your Facebook page. You're also out there on Instagram. And see if I can get this. Sometimes they make me log
Doesn't
in
come
and
up.
I'm not. Okay, well we can
Oh, it
actually
is.
see some here. So you can see some of her work out here. This one we're just looking at with the palm trees there. Uh, but these are really nice. And this one, I'm not going to click on it because I did that earlier and I got stuck in there.
Oh, right. Yeah,
But this
yeah.
field of poppies reminds me of, I think it was Mayonnaise or Monet's field of poppies. I forget which one did
Sure,
that.
right.
Uh, but those are always nice. And then this field
They're
of
fun.
lavender here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the plant is, if it's a lavender plant or what.
That sure, that's lavender.
Okay,
That was a commission for somebody.
yeah, but
So
yes, a very very nice work. In this one, I'm just surprised how bright that comes out. It almost looks like a more like a photograph. I'm
well, well
assuming
that
that
is
it's
a
a
photo.
pastel. Oh, that is a photo.
That's what that's a photo.
Oh,
So on
okay.
my Instagram, yeah, on my
You're trying.
Instagram page, yeah, I
You're trying to.
occasionally put. Yeah, I'm trying to fool you. No,
You're
I
trying.
occasionally put photos because it's kind of like my Instagram page is kind of like what I'm doing every day. So
Yeah.
that was when we were camping. Um,
Yeah.
and then these are the things that I've worked on this past week. So it's
Yes.
kind of like if you go to the Instagram, you can see a timeline of what I've been doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Unfortunately,
so
I don't have an Instagram account, and I'm not going to set one up at this point. But if anyone else wants to go to these, they are
yeah, I
very,
love
very
I
good.
love. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, Instagram is fun. It's an easy way to share, and it's fun to look at too. So,
Okay, and then she's also out here on Etsy.
hmm
Can I get that? Oh, there we go. See
I
what we got
have.
out here. So you have
So
some more
that's my
work out
Etsy
here.
shop. Yeah, and most of these are either the demos that I've done or just painting, from for pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, I like the watermelon one.
That's a,
Yeah,
yeah, that
I did
was
not check this site out yet, so I'm I'm doing my
yeah.
browsing of which I love to
Well,
do.
a lot of I started at Etsy. Well, back when I first started thinking I wanted to try to sell something so that I could have money for supplies. That was my goal. Um, and I have found that if you want to be successful on Etsy, because there's so much competition, you really have to be very active. So people who are ask me for advice, uh, you need to continuously either upload new work or make changes, but you have to show some activity, or else it just kind of sits there. So
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that also helps with uh, finding the audience because
exactly,
you can take a picture, no matter what it is, and you're gonna find some people really like it, some people are just okay, and some people don't like it at
right,
all and just ignore it.
right,
And so the more you get out there, the more likely you're gonna hit someone that, oh, hey, that I really like, I'm gonna buy it.
exactly.
So I mean, it's same reasoning with the in-person shows, like they have in like Lake Forest and down in Libertyville and what have you.
Right.
So okay, all right. And I know we talked before a little bit about your upcoming classes. You don't have anything out there right now for 2021. You had a whole list of workshops for 2020. Were you able to make all those, or did the pandemic get in
No,
the way?
yes, very much so. I had probably a workshop scheduled every month. So some of them have been postponed to 2022. Let's see, 2022. Some of them I did as an online offering, and we worked that out that way. I do have two scheduled for the fall. We're still waiting to see if those will actually happen in real life, or if we'll just go online. Um, and so I'm currently working on my 2022 schedule, and hopefully those will be all in person.
Okay. Would
Yeah.
you're still open to doing online uh, workshops?
I love
I would
doing the
assume.
online
That's
workshops. Yeah, I actually came up with a different type of format. I didn't do a Zoom. Traditionally, a lot of the artists were starting doing Zoom workshops. What I did instead was I did videos for each. sessions. So my workshop was in 3 sessions, and I did a demo and a lesson for each session. And then I gave assignments, painting assignments. And so then I worked with each artist individual via email to help them with their assignment. And then at the end of the week, I did another video where I showed all the work and gave feedback. So everyone could kind of work at their own pace, but within that week framework, they didn't have to be sitting there at the Zoom session.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice idea.
So
That's very
it
good.
worked out really well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to sort of take a look at that ourselves and see if we can get artists like yourself doing something up in this
Yeah,
area.
it worked out really well. I got some really positive feedback from that format. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'd be nice format where if we could get members like, we have a number of art leagues, art associations up around here,
right.
and it'd be great to maybe hit a few of those, get them together, because anyone, like ours, any one organization is going to have everyone wanting to learn pastels.
Sure.
But
Right.
if we open it up to 2 or 3 different art leagues, we
Right.
probably get enough people to really make it worthwhile to do something like that.
Yeah.
So, and we have been talking about that. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll
Well, it's
maybe
yeah.
maybe
If
we'll
you want to
talk to you about it
consider it,
here.
it's yeah. That would
Yeah,
be fun.
yeah. So, uh, anyways, that's it. I think we used up our allotted time and uh,
Okay.
what have you. So I will let you go, and I want to thank you for doing the interview, and I'm looking forward to the April demonstration that you're going to be doing.
I'm looking forward to it too. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and nice to have an opportunity to share with the group.
Yeah, good. Thank you. We'll see you then.
Thank you. Bye bye, Jeff.